Hey, welcome to this channel. If you're new, let me first answer the title of this video. The answer is no. This is not going to replace a full-on camera, but it gets real close, and for the package, for the footprint, and for the size, it gives you really good results. There's so much to say about this Xiaomi 13 Ultra, but what I want to talk about specifically in this video is photography and how good or how bad the cameras at the back are. Let's do it. It has an extension grip at the bottom, and this acts as a shutter button, focusing button, and zoom little dial. So you can do all these things thanks to the grip. It also gives you this little thing here that you can attach to your wrist and take photos in case you drop it. It's not going to fall on the floor because the size of the screen, I mean, you don't want this to fall on the floor, okay? And this attaches to the actual cover around the phone, and it allows you to put a cap on the cameras. That will prevent the cameras from getting scratched, and it will give you a nice security since it's all glass so that it doesn't get broken. And then what you can do is you can take off the little ring that, you know, acts as a support for the cap, and you can put the little filter adapter, 67mm filter adapter they give you with this phone, and you can put, you know, if you have some filters laying around, for example, if you want to put a VND, ND, polarizing, and so forth, you can put them on. That will allow you to take photos, for example, of a lake and cut the reflections, or saturate your photos more, or, you know, long exposures and things like that. So it is really cool that you can also do that. You can shoot in JPEG, RAW, and Ultra RAW. What they call Ultra RAW is a 14-bit RAW file, which is actually a DNG because it's Leica files, and that gives you more flexibility in your highlights and your shadows and the dynamic range when you do your post editing. It really is great to work on the DNG files with this camera. I found myself having a lot of fun, having quite some flexibility from what I shot to what I could do afterwards, and it is very enjoyable. There are also professional features such as focus peaking, so you can see where your focus is at all times, histogram to see how your exposure is, and so forth. So all these features are included in this little camera phone. You get my point. There are 4 cameras at the back of this phone. Let's talk about the key main camera. This is a 1-inch 50 megapixel sensor, a 23mm equivalent. 23mm, in my opinion, is a little too wide. I normally shoot 35mm when I go out to shoot street photography, or even for everyday life, sometimes 28. It happened to me to shoot 24, but 23 is very wide. Now, it didn't stop me from getting great shots. That's my personal opinion. The aperture varies between 1.9 and f4. You can choose. I let the camera decide for, I would say, 99% of the shots, because unless you want to do a creative effect on something, the camera does a good job at just choosing for you. You will notice that I keep saying the camera, so I'll just call it the camera. It has hyper OIS, which probably means that it is more stabilized than just OIS. And in fact, I didn't notice any shakiness or anything when I was taking my photos. I mean, 23mm is pretty wide, so you're not going to have too much shaking at that focal length. Next up is the Leica ultra wide lens. This is a 12mm equivalent focal length, which is quite wide. I mean, this is basically a fisheye lens. It is an interesting lens. I mean, it is great. It is f1.8, and it, by the way, supports 5cm macro photography. So you can take photos where, you know, you are very tight, closed space, and you want to really get everything in your photo. You can use this. For example, in this train station, I was taking photos of the ceiling, or this other one here where you can see a nice spot between buildings that I really liked. And yeah, not my favorite lens, but it's there. So in case you need something ultra wide, you can use it. Then there's the Leica Telephoto lens. This is a 75mm equivalent. For those that don't know, 75mm is in the range of portrait lenses that we normally use to shoot portraits. The sweet spot is the 85mm, usually in full frame for pro photographers, but you can go from 70 to 90-ish, and that's very good in terms of compression for the background. But you can also use this to just, you know, shoot photos of things that are far away, and you need to just be able to take photos of those without getting too close. And it works great. I really enjoyed using this. This also has an f1.8 aperture, and it is as well optically stabilized. And last but not least, the Leica Super Telephoto lens. So it is 120mm equivalent, f3, and it is also optically stabilized. Now, this is an impressive one. And when it says that it's optically stabilized, it actually is optically stabilized. Like when you go and take your photo, you know, it has that you know, delay when you move around a bit. You can see that it compensates for the movement, and it really keeps you, you know, stable. your frame stays stable. For example, I took some photos of windows and I was getting real close to it and I was so far, and the results look good. They don't look that digital. They don't look like it's taken with a cell phone. It could be just a regular camera. There is a continuous autofocus feature, which is great. And like I said earlier, you have this little grip with a shutter button. If you press it halfway and you keep it that way, it's going to show you all the little squares, you know, showing you where it's focusing automatically. And it's funny because at some point for this photo specifically here that I underexposed, by the way, by 2 stops, in camera, I was waiting for someone to pass by, and as soon as someone came in the frame, the focusing went straight on his face, even though you couldn't see the face. The head was being followed, so it was literally instantaneous. There was no delay of, you know, any sort, and I could take my photo. So I was very happy with the continuous autofocus. You can choose between 2 styles, Leica Authentic and Leica Vibrant. I mean, the names speak for themselves, but basically Vibrant means that the colors are going to be more punchy, more saturated, and Authentic is basically what was there when you took the photo. The actual colors, more real or true to real life. And the feature Ultra Night Photography is a mode that you can, by the way, activate automatically if you want to do so. And what it does is the fact that you have such fast lenses, you know, I mean, f1.8, f1.9, it's pretty fast for a lens. It allows you to capture more light faster. So it does a good job at taking photos at night and taking as much light as possible, as fast as possible, and as stably as possible. So I like that feature. It is great. It takes very good photos at night. Nothing to complain about. As I would do with any other camera, I want to talk a little bit about the specs. And one of them is the weight. It only weighs 227 grams. That tells you how compact and lightweight this thing is. It can obviously fit in your pocket. And like we say, the best camera is the one on you. And if the one on you can be this good and this portable, it is even better. It has a 6.73-inch display, which is quite massive and big. And it is great when you go take photos because you can really easily see what you're taking photos of. Speaking of that, the peak brightness is 2600 nits. If you compare that to, for example, the iPhone 15 Pro Max that has 2000 nits at its maximum peak brightness, you can see that it is really strong. And in fact, when I was outdoor taking photos and it was sunny, there was sunlight, I did not once have a problem seeing my exposure because of reflections or because I couldn't see what was on the screen or so forth. And I could always take my photos, view my photos, and it would just adjust very, very fast and well. So that's very practical. The battery is 5000 milliamp hour. If you compare that to, again, the iPhone 15 Pro Max that has 4422, it is, again, a good improvement over that. And if you're going to be using this for photography specifically, just to give you an example, obviously battery life changes depending on what you do with your phone. I didn't have any cellular data. I didn't use any, you know, social media and so forth. But to take photos the entire afternoon, I was down to 93%. In the evening, 93% means I didn't even use 10% of the battery. Last but not least, it is IP68, so you can put it in the water, submerge it up to 1.50 meters for up to 30 minutes. Obviously, I mean, we don't do that. But if you want to go outdoor, shoot when it's raining or, you know, when it's a bit humid and so forth, you're not going to have any problem. That's something that would be an issue with my regular cameras that I would not do. So you see, there are lots of pros. To take back the question from the beginning of this video, is this going to ever replace a camera? I would surely use this in a holiday, you know, to go out and take some street photos just for pleasure and leisure. But would I use this, for example, for a wedding? No, I wouldn't. Would I use it for a pro shoot? Definitely not. I'm sure there are ways that you could use it and so forth, even for a video, you know, to put an ND filter and keep a nice shallow depth of field. You can do it, but it doesn't give you everything a full-on camera gives you. And while I was so impressed with it in terms of results, I still would go with, you know, Leica Q, Leica M, Leica SL, or Fuji, or whatever brand you use. Full-on camera makes a difference in terms of, you know, the handling of it. There, I hope I answered all the questions you had about this little phone, camera, call it however you want. If you have any other question that I did not answer, write it down in the comment section below. I will do it gladly. And I see you, like always, in my next video. Don't forget to subscribe if you like my content. Cheers.